Monza is very, very special indeed.
There it is, most historical and charismatic
circuit currently in use for World Championship Grand Prix racing. The first event was held here of any importance in 1922. All the greats have raced here. People like Herman Lang,
Rudolph Caracciolo, Dick Seaman for Mercedes before the war, Fangio, Jackie Stewart, Jim Clark and the rest. And here
is a man who is on the verge of greatness. David Coulthard, who starts from pole. Times, you know, when Damon Hill sounds and in manner is eerily like his great double world champion father, Graham Hill.
I found that occasion one of them when
Damon was speaking. But there is Mika Hakkinen, who is 7th on the grid in his McLaren Mercedes. As you can see, there's some work going on to the car. And Mika Hakkinen will be more than anxious to finish this race, never mind do well. At the Rettifilo in race conditions at the end of a lap, they slow down from about 195, 200 miles an hour, over 200 miles an hour in qualifying, to just about 55 miles an hour in an incredibly short distance. There are the first 3 rows of the grid. Mika Hakkinen and Johnny Herbert on row 4. And then Hakkinen's teammate Mark Blundell. Heinz-Harald Frentzen in the Sauber Ford has done extremely well here, and he was 7th fastest in the warm-up this morning. Looking forward to driving for Sauber next year. He re-signed for them here at Monza and will be using the new Ford V10 engine. Luca Badoer there had a very nasty crash yesterday at the Ascari Benz, but he had no problem personally. The car was rather sick after it had finished rolling, but they've rebuilt it, as they have rebuilt the car of his teammate Pedro Lamy, and they're both starting in this 6th on the grid. An excellent performance. And you're looking now down the start and finish straight to the famous Parabolica corner in the background as away they go on the parade lap.
Interesting to see that Michael Schumacher is on brand new tyres there as Mika Hakkinen lights up the rear tyres, getting some wheel spin. That's that smoke. But look at that smooth surface too. This is the new surface that we've got here at Monza, and that means that we see much less of the bottoming. Now that is the Rettifilo chicane. That is where Eddie Irvine went up to the back of Johnny Herbert in last year's race at the start, through there in 2nd gear, being careful to use just the right amount of curb. That's probably about a foot of curb on that. And we can see on this diagram in front of us the intermediate 1 and intermediate 2. These are points upon which the timing is done. It's not just done on the start-finish line, and in qualifying we see the time it takes to do each of these 3 sectors. But the interesting point from us in the race is that that will allow us to check the gap between 2 cars, not just at the start-finish line, but also at those 2 intermediate points. Now behind us now is the Roggia chicane. This is another 2nd gear, 60 miles an hour chicane, into the first Lesmo. Now the circuit's been modified this year, and then into the 2nd Lesmo. These are both 3rd gear corners. That's coming out of the 2nd, 3rd gear. That means around about 100 miles an hour, 110 miles an hour. Now this is a very fast circuit. It's very fast, it means high top speeds, and high top speeds means small wings, and you can just see ahead how very thin basically the rear wing on those cars are. The combination of little downforce and hard tyres means that the cars will slide around a great deal, and it looks like David Coulthard's gone off on the warm-up lap.
Well, somebody certainly has, and it's a Williams, and it is David Coulthard.
Now this is quite incredible.
David Coulthard, for whatever reason, has blown his chances of winning the Italian Grand Prix before it even starts. And that means to say,
He is struggling back onto
the line, but even if his car is undamaged, he will have to start from the back of the grid, and that effectively makes Michael Schumacher the pole position holder, with Gerhard Berger moving up to 2nd and Damon Hill up to 3rd, and there will be nobody on the... Here's a replay coming up now. Let's look at it.
Now let's have a look there. He gets on the power, the back comes around, he goes into the gravel trap. I don't think he's actually touched anything. Now this is simply exactly what I was saying, the combination of low downforce, these very hard tyres. It's taken these drivers a long time throughout the weekend in terms of a number of laps to get temperature into those tyres, but that is a basic driving mistake from David.
Some time before they come up yet, of course, but as you see on the left, Michael Schumacher is now in pole position effectively, with to the right in the red Ferrari Gerhard Berger, and behind Schumacher is Damon Hill, and into the pits has come David Coulthard as the last two cars, the 40s, come up to take their position on the 23 car grid. Who's going to get into the Redifilio first? Is it going to be Schumacher? Schumacher cutting off Gerhard Berger. Alesi trying to sprint through, but Schumacher, Alesi and Berger go into the Redifilio together. Now, are they all going to get through? They're all through so far. Somebody nearly off, but as we move round with the leaders, it looked to me as though everybody got round except, of course, the unfortunate David Coulthard. Maybe it was the stress of the occasion that got to the Scotsman, but whatever, his chances of winning have been severely diminished because he's coming out from the pit lane eventually to start right behind the rest of the field. And Schumacher leads. Ferrari, Johnny Herbert is up into fourth position, ahead of Damon Hill. And it is Gerhard Berger who is second. It's Jean Alesi who is third. And this has been the opportunity of a lifetime for Michael Schumacher, who must be sitting there hardly believing his luck that David Coulthard, who has dominated the Monza meeting so far with fastest time on Friday and then a repeat to give him pole position for the start of the race, didn't even start it. And David Coulthard is the first retirement of the Italian Grand Prix. He is out of the race. And now the and that is on Montemini out in the Pacific. So that's two retirements, and there is it's Bouillon, and behind Bouillon is one of the Arrows cars. It looked like Max Papis to me. So that's four cars missing at the end of the first lap, and into the lead goes the Ferrari. Gerhard Berger has gone into the lead in the Ferrari ahead of Michael Schumacher, and they're going to have to stop the race. They're going to have to stop the race. The red flag is out. The Italian Grand Prix is being stopped. Now, this is a good thing for David Coulthard because they will have to reform the grid, and he should be able to get back on the grid in pole position. There is Coulthard's car in the garage, and they're getting the spare car ready for David Coulthard. So terrible luck for Max Papis, for Bouillon, but great luck for David Coulthard. This is his chance. Here's a replay.
Now that's the Pacific there of Montermini, I'm sure, spinning, or it might even be a Tyrrell. No, that's Montermini. Papis ahead, through goes Lamy in one of the Minardis, then Moreno, I believe. And so that is Montermini. Difficult to know quite what happened there, how it was caused, but that was at the Ascari chicane. Then that's Pedro Diniz. So Pedro Diniz in one of the 40 cars, he was involved. And there we are, there's Montermini getting really very agitated indeed. Not quite sure why, but maybe he thinks he can get his car back to the pits. But this is going to be a tremendous relief for David Coulthard. Now the spare Williams is set up for Damon Hill, and despite the fact they're roughly the same size, there is a lot to be done. And you can see the track is virtually blocked. In fact, it is completely blocked there, and they're being channeled around, and this will mean that they're going to be picking up dirt and dust because they're right offline on that, and we may well see some tyre changes going on now. But what a huge relief for David Coulthard. He won't believe it. He will have been absolutely distraught to have gone off like that, and now his emotions are going to be in complete turmoil as he now needs to get back in that car. He will know the team will have been absolutely furious with him. He'll be furious with himself, but this is a second chance, and this will mean that at the restart, David Coulthard will once again start from his pole position place.
The amazing thing about Coulthard going off, of course, and this is a comment and not a criticism, is that he would have known how hard those Goodyear A compound tyres are. He's been using them through Friday and Saturday qualifying, and this morning he would know, of course, that as the man in pole position, his is the responsibility for leading the field round, and he can drive at any pace he likes. Berger really giving it some stick as he weaved and twisted and turned to build up heat. I say again, you've heard it several times, but it really is desperately important to register that they are hard compound tyres. They are not up to race temperature. We've seen already what happened once. Bouillon starting from the pit lane in the Sauber Ford. The rest are on the grid. Coulthard in front. To the left of him, Schumacher. Behind Coulthard is Berger. Behind Schumacher is Damon Hill. Behind Berger is Jean Alesi in the second Scarlet Ferrari. Behind Damon Hill is Rubens Barrichello. And Lavargi at the back in the Pacific comes up to his position. The race is almost go. It is go, and this time Coulthard is in front, and he stays in front. David Coulthard leads. Damon Hill sprints up to Michael Schumacher, who comes up to the Rettifilio, and Berger has got ahead of Schumacher. So Coulthard leads. Berger's got ahead of Schumacher in the Benetton, who's got Damon Hill right behind him, and heavens, they've all got through the Rettifilio, and Coulthard has already built a gap. He's settled down absolutely magnificently. David Coulthard in the Williams Renault leads. Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari. Michael Schumacher in the Benetton. Damon Hill is fourth. Herbert is in fifth position. Jean Alesi in the second Ferrari has been passed by Herbert, and Berger is going for the lead. He knows now that if he pressures David Coulthard, this will be the Scotsman's weakest time during the race before he fully settles down, but he seems to have done that already. Coming out of the Lesmo bends up to the Ascari chicane. It's a bit of a climb here, and it's turning left, right, left. Coulthard, Berger, Schumacher, Hill, Herbert out of the chicane. Now it's up to the Parabolica, the long 180-degree right-hander. We're riding with Gerhard Berger in second position, and that is Coulthard's Williams Renault in front of us as they go into the Parabolica. Slowing from 190 to 100 miles an hour, Jean Alesi in the Ferrari, and it's going to be across the line at the end of the first lap. Coulthard, Berger, Schumacher, Berger having a look. Coulthard will have nothing of it. He's well and truly in the groove now. Schumacher is third. Hill is right behind him. There's a gap between Damon Hill and that's Jean Alesi, who is in fifth position, followed by Johnny Herbert. The first four are easing away. This is the Roja. Up to the first Lesmo and the second Lesmo, and the drivers are all saying, without exception, that although Monza has been altered in terms of the Rettifilio, the Rogia, the Lesmo bends and the Ascari bends, the Italians have done a superb job in maintaining the character of the track but making it much safer with big runoff areas, and that is one of the Tyrrell's, Ukyo Katayama, being passed as Coulthard comes through. Berger. And this is the Ascari bends again. Schumacher making no impression on Gerhard Berger, who really made a magnificent passing manoeuvre. He locked everything up, tar smoke pouring off his Goodyears, and got past, and there is the spin that I was talking about, and it's one of the Ligiers involved. It looked like Martin Brundle to me, who's got through safely. And over the line, this is the end of the second lap out of 53, and you can see how close it is, and that's the order. Well, Coulthard now has got a lead of just about 0.6 of a second over Gerhard Berger, but the important thing, he's got a clear track in front of him. He knows what the conditions are and the circumstances are, and in spite of the fact that he's in the spare Williams, he seems to have mastered it and have adjusted to whatever differences remained between Damon Hill's spare car and his own race, pressing terribly hard. That's a Pacific off, and that's Lavargi, Giovanni Lavargi, so that's both the Pacifics out, with Montermini failing to start and Lavargi out of up to 1/5 distance in the Italian Grand Prix, with things very close indeed at the front. Coulthard is now leading Berger by 2.4 seconds. So David has really got a grip on the race, nearly 2.5 seconds ahead of Berger, who has got Michael Schumacher right behind him. There is Damon Hill in the Williams, still in 4th position. Lacey 5th. Barrichello is 6th. Hakkinen is 7th in the McLaren. Johnny Herbert is in 8th position. 9th is Eddie Irvine. 10th and 11th are Mark Blundell and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, who have both got past Martin Brundle, probably experiencing problems with that rebuilt car of his. And everybody is pressuring everyone in front of him, with the exception of David Coulthard, of course, who is in front of the whole lot on lap 10 out of 53. Long way to go, but if he keeps this up, it's going to be good news for the Scot.
And that looks a problem there for Ligier, and whether it's an engine or not, I can't quite be sure, or a bit of bodywork, certainly a lot of smoke out of the back of Ligier there, and it looks like it's Panis. It's Panis, it's a left rear tyre blow. Brundle, I beg your pardon.
Martin Brundle with a blown left rear tyre, you can see. Now, maybe he was having a slow puncture when Blundell and Frentzen got past him, but for whatever, Martin Brundle is going to have to limp back to the pits, change that left rear. They'll change the other 3 tyres and wheels at the same time, of course. And now we are on lap 12. We're about halfway to the expected first tyre and refuelling stops when things could change. Martin Brundle has just exited the Lesmo bends. He's coming up to the Ascari bends.
And what's happening there is that flailing rubber is tearing off his bodywork. There's nothing really Martin Brundle can do apart from drive back. And but I suspect he'll find that as and when he gets back to the pits, that his car is going to be that destroyed from flailing tyres, that left rear, that he will have to.
And that is Mika Salo, the Finnish driver in the Tyrrell, and whatever is the problem seems to be taking a long time. 17.
As we suspected, Martin Brundle is sadly out of the Italian Grand Prix. And David Coulthard spins off there. David Coulthard's done it again.
Now, can he keep going? That's the important thing. These gravel traps are supposed to stop the cars altogether, but David Coulthard is amazingly finding traction. My goodness, he's going to be in a state, having done it not once, but twice, before the Italian Grand Prix and during the Italian Grand Prix. Now the question is, at what point is he? Here's a replay as Coulthard loses the back of the car. It spins round, does a full 360. Now the great thing is that he kept the engine running, and the even greater thing is that he managed to keep traction, because look how deep the gravel is there.
Let's have another look. He locks the rear brakes, you could just see it. The car spins around 360 degrees, and his heart would have been in his mouth at this stage. Apart from the fact that he knows he's made a big mistake, he'd also be desperate to eke it along, keep it going, get it past that gravel, and it could so easily have bogged down and stopped.
And now Gerhard Berger, to the delight of the Tifosi, leads the Italian Grand Prix, and you can see now that Michael Schumacher behind him and Damon Hill behind him will regard this as the ultimate in motivation, because if they can catch and get past the Austrian Gerhard Berger in the Ferrari, whoever does it will be leading, and the World Championship is effectively between those 2 men at the present moment. Gerhard Berger is down in 6th position in the championship, but he won a magnificent race for Ferrari here in 1988 after Ayrton Senna had been punted off the course by Schlesser, and Gerhard Berger would love to do it again, of course. This is his last Italian Grand Prix for Ferrari. Now mark this, the gap between Berger and Schumacher was 1.7 seconds at the end of the previous lap. The team is all ready to get David Coulthard in, who stops. He has to be pulled back. He's gone too far, he's overshot, and he's lost a lot of time. Oh, this is not going to be a race that David Coulthard will want to be remembering.
No, it really has all gone horribly wrong for David Coulthard with that first race formation lap spin, checking the wheel, getting the stones there out of the discs there, on go a second set of tyres. This was an unscheduled stop. He's coming a lot earlier for that first stop. He's losing a lot of time. He's out of the race. For David Coulthard, it is all over, and I'm afraid it was due, I'm pretty sure, to a mistake, a driving error. He was pulling away. He had 2.8 seconds over get.
Harness spins round over one curb, over the other, and out of the... and one of the lesser ones. And Hill hits Schumacher, they both go off! They both go off! This is a repetition of Silverstone! Amazing! Taki Inoue I don't know whether he got in the way, but Hill attacked, saw his opportunity. Schumacher running up to the Williams. Now, is he going to have words with Damon Hill? And the crowd is going wild with delight because they know now that Alesi is second. Damon Hill in the car and Schumacher shaking his head in disbelief. Now, it's so easy to arrive at a split-second point of view, but here's a replay now. Look, there is Inoue. Schumacher turns in, and Hill, who was passing Inoue, is right behind the Benetton, clips its left rear wheel, and there's going to be a big discussion about this as a disgusted, angry Michael Schumacher walked back with Damon Hill, and the crowd are delighted.
Now, on the right-hand side, we have got Dewey and Schumacher is in front. Schumacher brakes, lifts off the throttle. Hill simply brakes too late. He cannot stop. This is what Senna did. Senna ran up the back of, I think it was Martin Brundle, and that was a couple of years ago. Exactly the same corner. Simply braked too
confusing for a while, and that is Eddie Irvine on a replay, moving ahead of Gerhard Berger after the Austrian's tyre stop. Irvine moving up into 5th position. That's Mark Blundell, who was 7th in the McLaren Mercedes, into the pits. As you can see, another long stop. Out he goes.
Now, the really interesting stop to watch is going to be the one between these two drivers, and that's Rubens Barrichello. Barrichello is currently leading. Hakkinen is in 2nd place, but of course both need to stop yet. And Hakkinen is just 1 second behind Barrichello, and 1 second is the type of difference that can be made up by better pit technique. And McLaren will know that if they can get Hakkinen out of the pits ahead of Barrichello, then that's a position gained.
Here's a resume. David Coulthard is out of the Italian Grand Prix, having led it. Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher have taken each other out again, as they did at Silverstone, and are no longer racing at Monza. Rubens Barrichello, and there he is, leads on lap 27, but not for much longer, I think, because into the pit lane he comes. And over the line goes Mika Hakkinen to go into the lead, and that, if my memory serves me correctly, is the first time that a McLaren Mercedes has been in the lead this year, and for a very long time. Well, this year is the first year they've had the Mercedes engine, and Barrichello sits in the pits. Hakkinen leads, Herbert is 2nd, Irvine is 3rd, but none of those three have yet made their tyre stops as Olivier Panis walks in.
Interesting to see there on that Jordan pit stop that the mechanic had a blue blanket there on top of the side pod just below the refueling nozzle, and I'm sure that's a legacy from the refueling fire that of course occurred to Eddie Irvine's car. Now we need to look for Mika Hakkinen, because Hakkinen will of course be he's now ahead, he's now leading, but he has yet to make his pit stop. So Hakkinen out in front, leading the Italian Grand Prix, but that will be a temporary affair. We are going to see Gerhard Berger back out in front, and Jean Alesi. In fact, Alesi is ahead, I beg your pardon. Alesi is leading Berger. Berger is 1 second behind Alesi, so that is really the true picture.
Yes, effectively, Jean Alesi is leading the Italian Grand Prix from his teammate Gerhard Berger, as out goes Luca Badoer in the Minardi, and Mika Hakkinen is the actual race leader, with Johnny Herbert tight up behind him. This is a replay of Badoer going off at the 2nd Lesmo, loses it altogether over the curb. That's exactly what he did yesterday, albeit in a different place. They rebuilt his car overnight, and they're going to have to rebuild it again as race leader Mika Hakkinen comes into the pits. 28 laps completed in this 53-lap race. Johnny Herbert leads the Italian Grand Prix. Mika Hakkinen sprints out. When this race settles down round about lap 30, I'm expecting Alesi and Berger, who are now 2nd and 3rd, to be leading, because they have completed their stops. In fact, of the first 8 drivers, only one has not stopped, and that's the man you're looking at in the red-topped helmet. 9 seconds behind Alesi in 3rd position, and 5 seconds ahead of Hakkinen, who is in 4th place. Barrichello, and there is, off goes the Ferrari, and that is Gerhard Berger. What an incredible race this is. It's certainly not going to be a Ferrari first and second because Berger is out of the race. So we've had race leader David Coulthard retire. We've had now ex-race leader Gerhard Berger retire. And that's his last Italian Grand Prix for Monza. Here is a replay, and he did it all by himself at the back there. What happened, whether a suspension unit broke, whether one of the elements in the suspension broke, or whether it was a puncture, I don't know, but Berger is most definitely out.
Well, it looked like a front track rod failure, in fact, because we could see that left front wheel flapping, turning left and right by itself. The tyre looked to be intact. And that's a pretty unusual sort of failure again. We didn't see him touch anybody. That could be one reason for that. But the other one, it could perhaps be a consequence of this grueling circuit with the damage. That a good race indeed for McLaren.
It could well be a very good race for Johnny Herbert too, because he's actually lapping faster now, or was on the previous lap, than Jordan Lacey, the race leader, and had closed the gap to just over 7 seconds. But that is Hakkinen. And there in the background is Barrichello. That's the gap between third and fourth, with the Lacey and Herbert leading. And behind them, Frentzen, who's now in 5th position, Irvine in 6th place. We're riding with the McLaren now up to the Rettifilio. Mark Blundell, and he's got in front of him Eddie Irvine's Jordan Peugeot. Now they're out of the Rettifilio and up towards the Rogia. He's coming to the pits, and Johnny Herbert will be taking the lead of the Italian Grand Prix, and Johnny Herbert goes through and is leading, and he's now on his 47th lap in this 53-lap race as Lacey struggles with whatever the problem is in the pits, and now he's fighting for 2nd position.
And I wonder if in fact the problem might have been a brake. The brakes have been getting very hot at this race, particularly on a one-stop strategy. They've been looking at that right rear wheel, and if that brake disc had caught alight, it's a retirement. My guess is that it's a retirement due to a brake problem there. It looks like the smoke coming from that wheel. And with the high speeds of these cars in a straight line, they're as fast as they were last year, and indeed with running a one-stop strategy, which means the car will be heavier, there is greater load on the brakes, and it looks like the brakes on that Ferrari have caught fire. That's what we saw, and I'm afraid the damage is too much for Lacey to continue. The 2nd Grand Prix in a row at Italy, at Monza, that Jean Lacey has led in front of the Ferrari home crowd and has had to...
Well, there is a big scrum down here between the two Williams trucks. We did get a few words out of him, Murray, but basically he doesn't want to talk because he's on his way to see the stewards. He did ask me what Michael Schumacher has said, and I said that Schumacher and the Benetton team have already said they're going to protest Hill. He wants to look at the video first. He has promised to come back and talk to us later.
Well, we had contention between Damon Hill and Michael Schumacher in Australia last year when Michael Schumacher won the championship as a result of their controversial collision. Then it was repeated at Silverstone when they collided. It's been repeated here again. Who knows what the conclusion is going to be? Michael Schumacher, of course, was racing here under a one-race suspended ban. Damon Hill had had a one-race suspension suspended earlier in the season, but now Johnny Herbert is on his 52nd lap. He's completed 51 laps. He's got this lap and the one to go between himself and the checkered flag and victory at Monza with Mika Hakkinen, and there he is, second, 18 seconds behind Herbert, with Frentzen 10 seconds behind Mika Hakkinen, and it's a Benetton leading, a McLaren second, a Sauber in 3rd position, another McLaren in 4th place. An excellent drive for Mark Blundell. We're riding with Johnny Herbert now.
Italian Grand Prix at Monza has been quite incredible. Monza proving what a car-breaking circuit it is. We had David Coulthard make that mistake on the first race when he spun on the formation lap. We then had David Coulthard recover superbly, leading until he went out after the front hub bearing failed, maybe as a consequence of going over the curbs. Then we had another controversy with, of course, Damon Hill pushing Schumacher hard, and ultimately would certainly appear making a big driving mistake on that corner and running up the back of Michael Schumacher, putting them both into retirement. Gerhard Berger was then on a charge, following Jean Alesi, who was leading with a Ferrari 1-2, until Berger had a suspension failure again. One wonders if it had a link with the curbs and the chicanes of Monza. And then that left Jean Alesi out for what he'd hoped must be his first win in Italy on the Italian circuit, when he had a failure of the right rear wheel. It looked almost certain like brake failure, overheating brakes, braking again being a big stress on the cars here, which has left Johnny Herbert out in front and about to score his second win of the year, a win from which he won't get tremendous satisfaction in terms of his pace. He hasn't raced to this win here, but what he has done is looked after his car and he's not made a mistake, and this is where it's going to pay off.
Into the Parabolica for the 53rd and last time. Out of the Parabolica into the finish straight, and Johnny Herbert wins the Italian Grand Prix at Monza, his second victory of the year, and out comes the fist of victory and delight as Flavio Briatore and the Benetton mechanics congratulate each other and Johnny Herbert, and we wait for Mika Hakkinen to come through in second position. There he is, taking a very wide line, while he's had some criticism about precipitate driving, about impulsive driving, but he's come good here. Mika Hakkinen finished second, and Heinz-Harald Frentzen has finished third. Mark Blundell has finished in fourth position, and so we have a Benetton winning, a McLaren second, a Sauber. Is the delighted, the imp. They call him the imp, and you can see why. He's not the biggest man in the world physically, but he's one of the biggest men in the world from the point of view of fun and equable temperament. He's had a very rugged season, and he's coming through it magnificently. Three very happy men. Hakkinen in the red overalls, Johnny Herbert and Heinz-Harald Frentzen, and the anthem.
Si prepara a premiare il vincitore, il Presidente del Senato della Repubblica consegna il trofeo al pilota del vincitore, Johnny Herbert!
Well, you saw the Ferrari flag, but the Benetton flag is flying high metaphorically at Monza, and Johnny Herbert holds the trophy. That anthem was, of course, for Johnny Herbert and for the Benetton team. And down at the Benetton motorhome, there is all sorts of crush going on. I know that we're trying to get a word, or at least find out from Michael Schumacher what he thinks about things. But meantime, the drivers now, having driven those 53 laps, and Mika Hakkinen having redeemed himself very positively here, takes the trophy for second place.
I'm pleased to see Mika Hakkinen there congratulating Johnny Herbert. Just worth remembering that these two were in fact teammates in a few years past when they were both at Lotus. And what's interesting then is that Herbert and Hakkinen were very evenly matched indeed. And one of the great mysteries this year is how, as happens so often, how can any teammate of Johnny Herbert's at Benetton be apparently so much slower, perhaps 2 seconds slower. Now I'm sure that Johnny Herbert will get himself a drive somewhere else, Jordan maybe, Sauber quite possibly. And I suspect too that when that happens we shall see that Johnny Herbert is not indeed 2 seconds off the pace of a front-running man, but somehow the whole combination of circumstances which exist at Benetton mean that his potential has really not been fully realised, and the chap on his left may well be his teammate. Frentzen and Herbert could be the Sauber driver lineup next year.
Well, that's typical of the enthusiasm, not just of the drivers, but of the massive crowd which has broken ranks and is on the track. Good afternoon.